They were warriors in helmets, heroes millions cheered for every Sunday. But behind the glory, there was pain, lies, and silence. In locker rooms across America, players were risking everything, not for fame, not for money, but just to play one more game. This is the forgotten NFL scandal they never wanted you to remember. The game that demanded everything. Football, America's most watched sport, a game of power, strategy, and sacrifice. But in the 1980s and 1990s, that sacrifice took on a darker meaning. Players were expected to play hurt, bleed for the team, and keep quiet, no matter what the cost. Every hit was a collision between bodies and dreams. And for many, those dreams ended in broken bones, shattered careers, and ruined lives. But what if I told you? The NFL knew about it all along. This scandal wasn't about cheating. It wasn't about money. It was about silence. How the league turned away from its own players' suffering just to keep the game alive. The secret behind the pain. In the early 1990s, NFL players began whispering about something strange happening behind the scenes. Team doctors were giving out painkillers like candy, Vicodin, Toradol, and opioids to keep players on the field. Some called it toughness. But in truth, it was something much darker. Players who could barely walk on Monday were expected to suit up by Sunday. Those who refused, they risked losing their spots and their livelihoods. Many didn't question it. They took the pills, smiled for the cameras, and pushed through the pain. Because in the NFL, pain was part of the job description. But those drugs had consequences. By the time they retired, many players were addicted, their bodies dependent on the very substances that once kept them in the game. And the league? It claimed ignorance. The silence of the NFL. For decades, the NFL sold an image. Heroes battling on the gridiron, indestructible, unstoppable. But behind that image was a carefully constructed wall of silence. Players who spoke out were blacklisted. Team doctors denied wrongdoing. And the league continued to rake in billions. When reporters asked about injuries or painkiller abuse, the answers were always the same. The players knew what they were signing up for. But how can you sign up for something you were never told the full truth about? The NFL had a long history of denying the long-term effects of head injuries, concussions, and painkillers. They funded research to downplay the risks, silenced doctors who disagreed, and kept the truth buried until one player refused to stay quiet. The player who spoke out. In 2012, former players filed a lawsuit against the NFL. Among them was a man named Richard Dent, a Super Bowl champion and one of the most feared defensive ends in the game. Dent revealed that during his career, he was given so many painkillers that he couldn't even remember how many. He said, "We were given drugs without explanation, without warning. We were told to take them, and hundreds of former players joined him, claiming the NFL had created a culture of abuse, one where the only thing that mattered was keeping the show going. Their bodies were disposable, their pain invisible." The culture of play through it. To understand this scandal, you have to understand the culture of the NFL. In football, pain is seen as a badge of honor. You break your finger, tape it up. You have a concussion, shake it off. Coaches, teammates, fans, everyone expected you to push through. But the cost was devastating. Players were forced to play with broken ribs, torn ligaments, and concussions so severe they couldn't remember their own names. Some even collapsed after games, unable to stand. Yet, week after week, they kept showing up, because walking away meant losing everything. This wasn't just a physical game anymore, it was psychological warfare between loyalty and survival. The hidden epidemic. When the truth started to surface, it was horrifying. An internal investigation revealed that NFL teams were distributing massive amounts of painkillers illegally. without proper prescriptions or medical supervision. Between 2008 and 2013, team medical staff gave out over 5 million doses of controlled substances to players. 5 million doses. That's more than most hospitals use in the same period. Many of those drugs were meant to mask pain, not heal it. They allowed players to keep moving while their injuries worsened beneath the surface. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a system, the fallout. In 2017, the league quietly settled one of the major lawsuits, agreeing to pay millions in damages to former players who suffered from the misuse of painkillers. But the money couldn't buy back their health. It couldn't erase the years of suffering, the families torn apart, or the players who had already lost their lives to addiction. The human cost. Meet Jim McMahon, former Chicago Bears quarterback. He could barely remember his children's names after years of head injuries and medication. He said, "The painkillers made us superhuman on the field, but they destroyed us off it." He once said, "They used us like disposable tools. When we broke, they threw us away." These aren't isolated stories. They're part of a larger truth. The shift begins. In 2019, the NFL announced stricter guidelines for medication use. Teams were now required to track every pill given, every injection administered. How much is too much to sacrifice for the game? The NFL had to face an uncomfortable reality. Their heroes weren't indestructible. They were human. What the NFL tried to bury. Even today, this scandal doesn't get the attention it deserves. Maybe because it's easier to cheer for the touchdowns than to look at the truth behind them. But this forgotten story reveals something deeper about the NFL's history. A willingness to risk human lives for entertainment. The league built its empire on courage and sacrifice, but it blurred the line between bravery and exploitation. And when those same players needed help, they were left with silence. The legacy of the scandal. Today, some progress has been made. The NFL funds mental health programs, pain management alternatives, and concussion research. But for many former players, it's not enough. They live with daily pain, PTSD, and memories of being told to man up while their bodies broke down. This scandal reminds us that behind every highlight reel lies a story of endurance, and sometimes tragedy. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe for more.